Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to Lynbrook Board of Education regular monthly meeting, April 20th. We always begin with the salute to flag. Mr. Yaker, if you could lead us.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All are in attendance except for Mrs. Hanson. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of the March 10th, 2021 regular meeting? Mr. Pileski, second. Mr. Yaker, all in favor? I need a motion to accept the minutes of the March 17th, 2021 virtual work session. Mrs. Danino, second. Mr. Paskoff, all in favor? And finally, a motion to accept the minutes of the April 7th, 2021 work session. Mr. Yaker, second. Mrs. Marcus, all in favor? We're now going to move over to the art gallery. This month's art gallery show entitled Senior Spotlight, featuring artists from our senior portfolio preparation class. If you could play the video, please. Sure. On a personal note, Mr. Paskoff, where are you sitting this time? Mr. Kunz, I heard, was soliciting ideas for his art. I pushed heavily for the birdhouses again, which we have not had in many years, but I still have mine. So, Mr. Kunz, if you're listening. Not saying that's a dictate from the board, but we'd be very happy to see those. Oh. Sherry Bowes said we could line the tennis courts.
Gallery proudly presents the Portfolio Senior Spotlight Show, featuring the various artistic approaches explored by our senior portfolio preparation class. Students at this level are given the variety of different materials and approaches of their own choosing, under the guidance and mentorship of art teacher Mr. Tom Senna. Students this year have created exceptional work using everything from traditional graphite and paint to more sophisticated mediums, including acoustic wax, collage, and digital approaches. Despite the inherent challenges of a hands-on class during this new normal environment, this year's group has already surpassed $500,000 in Art Pound scholarships and continue to be accepted into the top fine art programs in the nation. Take a moment to enjoy the class of 2021's final swan song, as many embark next year on to continued success in college-level art programs after experiencing one of the strongest high school foundations anywhere in the country.
Thank you, Mr. Kunz. Thank you, Kay, for that video. We also tonight would like to welcome some new staff. If Adriana Schaefer could please stand up. Our new Director of Fine and Performing Arts. Congratulations and welcome. Lorraine Trustee, if you could please stand up. Reading teacher at Marion Street, welcome. We have some other additions that are not here tonight. Philly Belicia, teaching assistant at Waverly Park. Shannon McGovern, long-term substitute elementary teacher at West End. Stuart Ratskin, long-term substitute band teacher, Waverly Park and Marion Street. Catherine Scandafio, long-term substitute elementary teacher at West End. And Deborah Sobara, personal clerk at the administration building. Welcome. Moving on to presentations, Dr. Burek.
This evening, we have a few presentations, the first being the annual New York State PTA Reflections Contest. Every year, we participate in the Reflections competition, and even though during the COVID period, the submissions may have been low throughout the state, there was still participation, and we're very grateful for that, and it gave our students an outlet to work towards something. This year's theme for the New York State PTA Reflections Contest was I Matter Because. And I think that's really a powerful message for our students to learn. And we have one student from South Middle School who won a State Award of Merit, which is a great honor at the state level. And it was for actually a musical composition that was done on the English horn that was entitled We All Matter. So I'd like to recognize Eric Riley for winning the Award of Merit for the New York State PTA Reflections Competition. Congratulations, Eric. Come on up.
When is Waverly Park being done? When are the courts being done there?
Next summer, 22.
Summer 20.
If the voters approve it.
If you tell them there's pickleball lines, it'll be approved.
There you go.
Next, now in the sports world, we did have a team that won several state recognitions as well. Our girls basketball team. We have two New York State all-academic students, Camilla Barry, Kyla Nembach. We have New York State scholar athletes, Kayla Schweitzer and Leanna Sullivan. And actually, the entire team was a New York State all-academic team. None of the students could be here this evening, but we do want to recognize them because that's quite an accomplishment to be recognized at the state level. So congratulations to the girls. We also have Virtual Enterprise. Our Virtual Enterprise team at the high school, they do a bang-up job selling themselves and the work that they're doing, and they were recognized internationally as the top traders in the virtual enterprise world. So I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone. I've actually sent my Panera cookie cards because it's a large group of students, so they did get some type of recognition. But I did want to give a shout out because the virtual enterprise team is a top performer internationally. So congratulations to everyone there. And lastly, if you participated in a special program that our Student Government Association district-wide put together, Light Up the Sky, the SGA supported the PTA scholarship fundraising, and on March 11th, anyone who bought a luminary and put it out on their doorstep or wherever to light the sky, the SGA did very well, and we thank you for supporting their efforts. And this evening, we actually have a presentation, so I'm going to turn it over to the SGA if Ms. Bose, and are you bringing anyone else up?
I think Mrs. Kirby and a couple of students.
You can go to the podium. And I think, is Ms. Pignataro here, or someone from PTA? Mrs. O'Donovan, want to come up?
Max, don't show them, show us.
Just turn it on, push the button up toward you.
Good evening. The LHS, SGA, and the Waverly Park Student Council are thrilled to be here this evening to present monies raised from the Lynbrook Lights the Sky fundraiser to the Lynbrook Council of PTAs for the Class of 2021 scholarships.
The SGA worked to create a partnership with both Waverly Park and West End student councils. After the SGA worked with the LHS alum Jeff Scalar on learning about the 6 pillars of positive leadership, we put together 6 different presentations and shared the importance of these pillars with the members of the student councils via WebEx.
The SGA presented 6 different prepared presentations on empathy, civility, humility, self-awareness, meaning, purpose, and focusing on the positive. Both the high school SGA and elementary student councils shared real-life experiences and made connections to all 6 pillars.
This fabulous collaboration between the high school and elementary school students helped us to put together a successful fundraiser, Lynbrook Lights the Sky. The students in Lynbrook saw a need to raise funds for the LHS class of 2021. We knew that because of the pandemic, the funds that are normally raised at homecoming would not be a possibility. This amazing fundraiser was a success ultimately because of the community we all call home. Please accept this check of $3,600 for the LHS class of 2021.
The Lynbrook Council of PTAs says thank you so much to SGA for contributing to our scholarship fund this year. You guys did an awesome job. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, look at her first. Okay, now over here. Great, thank you.
Max, can we see the poster? Shaq, let the board see it. Oh, they make Shaq. Oh, very nice.
Nice job.
Good job. Moving along with the program this evening, we have 3 retirements this evening. Could Mary Ann Glorioso please stand up?
Whereas Ms. Mary Ann Glorioso, account clerk in the business office of the Lynbrook Public Schools, has announced her intention to retire after 18 years of service effective June 29, 2021, and whereas Ms. Glorioso's careful eye for detail and profound understanding of the rules and regulations of purchasing and her ability to convey this knowledge to others has earned her the title of the auditor before the audit. And whereas this particular talent has directly led to the district's 6-year streak in obtaining the prestigious Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, and whereas Ms. Glorioso has regularly demonstrated the ability to be a careful steward of the taxpayers' funds by always questioning vendors' invoices and pointing out their mistakes to the district's benefit. And whereas Ms. Glorioso's intimate knowledge of the Medicaid and education billing process has brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue to the district, and whereas Ms. Glorioso's deep faith and sense of friendship has been noted and appreciated by all of those who know her for her kindness and willingness to help others in need. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of Lynbrook Union Free School District accepts the resignation of Ms. Marianne Glorioso for the purposes of retirement effective June 29, 2021, and wishes her many days of waking to no alarm clock with the ability to spend time with her dear niece and sister and countless hours of reading.
Congratulations.
Marianne, just sit tight after we do the other retirees, then we'll bring everyone up for a picture, okay?
Arthur Farrar, if you could please stand up.
Whereas Mr. Art Ferrara, head custodian, South Middle School in the Lynbrook Union Free School District, has announced his intention to retire effective June 25th, 2021, after 22 years of dedicated service to the students, faculty, and parents of the Lynbrook Union Free School District. And whereas Mr. Art Ferrara faithfully supervised the custodial crew at South Middle School for over 2 decades, as well as honorably served his coworkers as union president for 15 years. He proudly served without hesitation during times of emergency, such as September 11th, Superstorm Sandy, and the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas Mr. Art Ferrara was always willing to go above and beyond his duties for South Middle School, whether handling the district's sporting events, assisting an injured student, monitoring the progress of construction projects, or simply assisting a staff member with one of the countless problems that arose daily. Mr. Ferrara always handled himself with professionalism and with a manner of caring that exemplified his character as an honest and dedicated person. His leadership style has proven successful at South Middle School as well as among the district-wide custodial unit for 22 years. Art has received numerous accolades throughout his career and will surely be missed by the South Middle School staff. And whereas over his 22 years of service to the Lynbrook Union Free School District, Art has been a key figure in the negotiation of the union's collective bargaining agreements, professionally handled union-related staffing issues, and was always willing to assist a coworker in need. Whether the issue was personal or professional, Art was always there for them. As one of Mr. Ferrara's longtime employees, Oscar Urbana, said, "Anybody who works with Art becomes a better worker because of him." And I thank him for that. Not only do I call him a boss, but I call him a friend. I will miss him. This is a bittersweet goodbye to a great man who made me better as a worker and as a person. And whereas the Board of Education thanks Mr. Art Ferrara for his service to Lynbrook schools and wishes him a happy and healthy retirement with his wife, Jeanette, his 5 children, Brian, Tricia, Kevin, Diane, and Danny, and his 6 grandchildren, Art will be sure to enjoy his retirement years, spending time with his family and assisting with babysitting duties with his grandchildren. In addition, Art plans on continuing to serve as a volunteer firefighter with Hicksville Fire Department, as he has done for the past 30 years. Art will donate his knowledge and time to the Cradle of Aviation Museum, assisting with aircraft repair, and will enjoy attending car shows and working on his Mustang. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation of Art Ferrara for the purposes of retirement. And just to follow up with that, on a personal note, Mr. Ferrara was tremendous when we were doing events for the track and field parents organization. He would always help me out with that. And my mother, to this day, still asks for him because he would always give her a cup of coffee or whatever she needed when she was at the desk, sometimes even just a friendly person to talk to. So I appreciate that, and so does she. Thank you, Art.
Robert Bavona, please stand up.
Whereas Mr. Robert Bavona, member of the maintenance staff in the Lynbrook School District, has announced his intention to retire effective June 25th, 2021, after 20 years of dedicated service to the administration, faculty, and staff of the Lynbrook Union Free School District. And whereas Mr. Bavona served the district with dedication and pride and was always eager to help with the task at hand. Whereas Mr. Bavona's commitment was unwavering during his 20-year span with the Lynbrook School District. He proudly served without hesitation during times of emergency, such as Superstorm Sandy and the COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas Mr. Robert Bavona was always willing to go above and beyond the call of duty with his work ethic. Bob always made sure to complete each job with the utmost perfection. Whereas the Board of Education wishes to thank Bob Bavona for his service to Lynbrook schools and wishes him a happy and healthy retirement with his wife, Arlene, his children, Lauren, Greg, and his pride and joy, his granddaughter. Bob will be sure to enjoy his retirement years with his family and friends. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation of Mr. Robert Bavona for the purposes of retirement and wishes him all the best in his future endeavors.
Congratulations. If those retirees could come up, please.
Can you move over from the camera a little bit?
At this time, it is typically and customary for the new staff and retirees to take their leave of the meeting and enjoy their evening, so took that hint pretty easily.
Where is she?
Hey, Mary Ann.
How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. You look relaxed. Congratulations.
Now it looks like a regular board meeting. Reports from trustees, anybody have anything? Mr. Paskoff?
To the homecoming football game, unfortunately, we lost, and it wasn't the traditional homecoming that we've had because there weren't that many people there. But hopefully next year, homecoming will bring a bigger crowd, the end of the pandemic, and a football win.
I also attended the homecoming game and went to a middle school football game. And it's really nice to be able to attend these games now and start to see people and feel somewhat of a sense of normalcy and see people in the community. And I'm also enjoying my new seat, and I was really impressed by the gallery presentation tonight. The artwork that was presented is just unbelievable, and every time I see new artwork, I think I can't be more impressed than the time before, and I am.
I also went to homecoming, and again, while it wasn't the full amount of community members that we usually have, it was still nice to see the families of the football players and the kick line and cheerleading senior parents. And, earlier that morning, I had been to the memorial service for Roseanne Strife. So, my heart goes out to the Strife family, but it hit me that we live in such a nice community that, there's an outpouring of people when sad things happen, and then there's also an outpouring of people, at times like homecoming and for celebrations. So it's nice to live in this community because of that feeling. And I also was at the middle school football game yesterday, and I echo Rob and Leslie's sentiments that it's nice to be able to be out in the community a little bit and, see people after having, been inside for so long.
Just one other thing that I attended, not a school-related issue, but this was the presentation by the group that's planning on developing the old feather factory. They plan on putting 210 units there, about 30 of which would be 2 bedrooms, which could affect the district. Most will be 1 bedrooms and studio apartments. It will be luxury, pretty much luxury. I consider it luxury when a studio goes for $2,000 a month. I consider that somewhat luxury. In addition, they are seeking a pilot, and I asked them specifically about the pilot, and they were very, they couldn't commit to what the schedule would be. They said they were going to do the right thing and not start the pilot much lower, but it really depends on the schedule, because for 20 years, we could get really shocked by the amount of money we lost. Pilots cost the village, pilots cost the district about $2 million a year, and where does that money come from? It comes from the taxpayer. So I think that's something that we need to look at very carefully when they make a formal proposal.
Seeing nothing else from trustees, we have no old business. Under new business, Dr. Burek, the Kindergarten Center.
So unfortunately, this calendar year has brought some sadness to Lynbrook schools. We've actually lost quite a few retirees, and you've heard the resolutions being announced at each board meeting. Unfortunately, there are additional resolutions that are going to be shared later on. But one of the people who we lost was Dr. John Byra, and we had done his resolution at the previous monthly board meeting. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Byra was the assistant superintendent of schools, but before that, he was also an English teacher, a guidance counselor, principal of the high school, and he was the first principal of our kindergarten center. And anyone who has gone through the kindergarten center, had children go through the kindergarten center, just know how special a place that building is, and the staff and the culture that was created in that building. And it really emanated from Dr. Byra's tutelage that so many have learned from him. And I think one of the statements I had said is those of us who did work for him are truly better off, and we're better educators because we had his wisdom guide us. I have a personal connection, as we're alumni of the same college, and we share our motto of fight the good fight. And he did fight the good fight all the way through, and he always fought for the students, for the staff of the Lynbrook schools. And his heart has been here even post-retirement. He came back. He actually came back to the board meeting where I was appointed in this position, and that was many years after his retirement. So the fact that he had such a powerful influence on the kindergarten center, the board has agreed to name the courtyard area, the area where all of the students come. They come off the bus, they gather, there's the flagpole, they do the Pledge of Allegiance, and they chant a motto that Dr. Byra wrote. So we're going to rename that courtyard area the Dr. John Byra Kindergarten Center Courtyard. So I thank the board for that. I think it's very well deserved. And the family is involved with this. The kindergarten teachers are actually raising money to help pay for the sign, just because they wanted to do that. It was just the right thing to do and the nice thing to do. So I thank them for that, and we're going to make a nice courtyard area, and we'll have a ceremony and invite the family.
Thank you, Dr. Barrett. Early this month, each of our buildings was inspected. Can Fire Inspector Mr. Kevin Herbst please come up and advise us?
Good evening. I completed the annual fire inspections on March 23rd, accompanied by Mr. Jim Sada. All the schools passed with flying colors. There was no issues. Your staff did a wonderful job. The paperwork was issued for filing with the State Education Department for your certificate of occupancies, and next year's inspection will be in the January-February timeframe.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Regarding the BOCES budget vote, Mr. Paskoff, you are our BOCES budget representative. Do you recommend us voting in favor of the NASC's budget?
Yes, it's costly, but we get a lot of benefits from it that we wouldn't be able to get otherwise.
Right. By just a show of hands, who's in support of the BOCES budget? All right, that's unanimous. Also, there are 3 people running for 3 spots for the NASC BOCES board. We have to do by a show of hands for each person if we're in favor, starting with Susan Bergtrom, by a show of hands. It's unanimous. How about Martin Kay? Good old Marty. Here we go. And Michael Wynick. Get Michael jumping right in there. Perfect. That's unanimous. Moving on to Superintendent's report, Dr. Bjork.
Thank you. And just one more follow-up with Dr. Byra. The family thinks so much of the Lynbrook schools that later on the board will be adopting a resolution actually starting a scholarship in the name of Dr. Byra. So we're grateful to the family, and you'll approve that later on. And Dr. Byra's legacy will live on for years. Okay, it's time for a COVID update for April. At this point, nearly every student whose family chose to return to in-person learning has done so. We welcome freshmen next week. All reports indicate that the return to school went well, and it was obvious that the students were happy to be back in the buildings. And with more people in school, I just want to encourage all to remain vigilant in our collective fight to prevent the spread of COVID. Masks are still very important and are required. We are in the home stretch for this school year and can't let our guard down, so let's hang in there, Lynbrook. As you know, the Department of Health did send out updated guidance as it pertains to schools. This past Friday's bulletin contained a brief listing of the protocols, and I'm happy to say that our committee work this year had already recommended most of the items, so we were ahead of the guidance as we returned more students back. This guidance will also be used to plan for next year. Now, I do just want to point out, because some people may be questioning the fact that we're still using barriers in the classroom, so I just want to publicly make the statement that when we sent out the survey and we gave the families the parameters, barriers were included in that. And it really would be disingenuous of us to pull that away just because the CDC then thought better of the guidance that they required us to have to consider in the fall. So we weren't going to turn our backs on the full disclosure of all the parameters that we gave families. So just to finish out this year, we're going to keep them. But for next year, we won't be implementing the barriers for next year. But once again, we are going to be starting a phase 5 of the task force to do our official planning for next year. And of course, as we expect the guidance, it will morph, and we will continue to be flexible as the modifications are made. We do not know at this point if remote learning will be a required option to offer next school year. However, we are hopeful that families will wish to return to school next year. The in-person learning is just so important. Just to put everyone at ease, through all of the contact tracing exercises we conducted this year, we can actually say we have recognized 0 cases of COVID-19 transmission in our schools. So our safety protocols have worked. We will continue to monitor them for the remainder of this year as the distancing in the classrooms has changed. However, the most important factor in mitigating the spread, as I just mentioned, is wearing the masks. So we remain vigilant on the mask-wearing protocols. Our goal is really that all families feel comfortable returning their children to in-person learning in the fall. It's just so important for the kids to be here. And speaking of the end of the year, guidance was also issued to help inform decisions about graduations and large events. Based on the venue and capacity, it's important to note that the larger the crowd, proof of a negative COVID-19 test and/or vaccination will be required. Principals are working on plans for the end-of-the-year events and with their PTAs, and more details about those events are really best learned from the building level. Once we get past the end of the year, we have summer. We will be running our summer playground program this year. While last year we ran a very limited capacity program, this year we are going to expand it while still implementing the safety protocols. And this year the program will be the full 6-week session, but we will limit the number of campers to approximately 200 per campus. Cognizant of the economic impact that COVID has had, the cost will remain the same as it was during the 2019 summer session. We will speak briefly about some of the revenue changes within the budget we presented back in February. We're going to do that in a short while. But I do want to mention that additional federal money has been allocated to all districts in the form of grants. We are currently planning for appropriate uses of that money for expenditures over the next 2 years. One such use would be to support some type of a summer learning program this year. We are going to take a look at the needs and offerings that we can support, and once more details are known, information will be forthcoming, so please be on the lookout for that additional information shortly. In addition to dealing with COVID-19 this year and setting guidelines for learning in the COVID era, the New York State Education Department has also been developing an initiative to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in all schools. New York State Education Department issued a statement that reads, "After a year of turmoil and heartbreak, it is natural to wish for a return to normal. But for far too many New Yorkers, the old normal is a place where people are traumatized daily by events, circumstances, and the chronic lack of opportunities," said Chancellor Lester Young, Jr. He continues to state, "I recognize that the scope of our diversity, equity, and inclusion framework is daunting, but we cannot allow this opportunity for change to pass us by. We must seize this moment to redefine what is normal and possible for our students. The pandemic has exposed and exacerbated long-standing inequities that exist throughout every facet of our society. People of color, economically disadvantaged people, and especially women, have been impacted hardest of all," said Commissioner Betty A. Rosa. A statement was also issued that condemns the acts of bigotry, xenophobia, and racism that are surging in New York and across the nation, with a spike in hateful rhetoric and violence directed at Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. As you know, folks, we in Lynbrook have been working on our approach to create a more diverse and inclusive environment for our students. Additional diverse literature selections will be offered to students, as Dr. Bilek has previously reported. Our Diversity Council continues to explore professional development opportunities and resources to support a culturally responsive classroom. We are committed to teaching our students about empathy, acceptance, and continue to work towards being recognized as buildings where there is no place for hate by the Anti-Defamation League. It is important that this work take place inside our buildings as well as outside. As the adage states, it takes a village. So if we work collectively to guide our children to be respectful and appreciate that our diversity is a strength of ours. In all things, we use our strengths to make ourselves better people. So I ask for your continued support as the district works toward those goals. The next item on my report is the ASBO International Certificate of Financial Reporting. And actually, in Ms. Glorioso's resolution, it was stated we are 6 years in a row we've been recognized for our transparency and our financial reporting. So I thank the entire business office under the direction of Dr. Lynch for earning that recognition for our district. So congratulations. And then I also just mentioned about some change in revenue with the state aid. As you know, in February, Dr. Lynch presented a budget that had a tax levy of 1.88% increase. That 1.88% is the maximum allowable levy that we are able to raise in taxes to support our educational program. Since then, the state finalized the budget and additional monies came forth our way. So we were able to take a look at our revenues, and we made some adjustments, one of them being the summer playground. So I just nicely announced that summer playground, we were going to keep the costs at the same as 2019. Had we not gotten that, received that additional state aid, the cost of that program actually would have increased significantly in order to maintain that program to accommodate the less number of campers. So we used some of the state aid to offset that. We also, in our long-term planning, we've been using a lot of reserve money over the past years to balance our budget. So we took the opportunity, knowing that after this gift of the state aid and the federal funds that are coming our way, there is going to be a financial cliff shortly, probably in 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 years, that we're going to see that cliff. So it behooves us to also take a look at some of the reserves that we use less of the reserves and use the additional state money to offset that. So this way we have more money in the reserves to continue on our path when that financial cliff hits us. So it will not be a dramatic impact on the taxpayer. So that's the long-range planning. What you see right now, if you can show this slide, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lynch to explain exactly, because these are the same 2 slides that he presented in February, but we just want to, for full transparency, share the changes with you now.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Burek. So I get to do the boring legal stuff. So just to inform the board where we're at here. So under the advice of counsel, you adopted a budget, an expenditure budget back in March. The expenditures are not going to change, so the budget is adopted. What is going to change is our revenue projections as presented to the community back in February. That will require us, tonight, disclosing those changes in revenue. And then most importantly, tomorrow I will be submitting to the State Education Department a revised property tax report card, which will have the new revenue projections in place. And then on May 5th, which is the legal hearing for the budget, these will be in place, so it's all about what Dr. Burek was saying, full transparency to the voters to know what they're voting on. So let's take a look at this in specifics. So there was a big deal made of this in Newsday, and everyone I'm sure saw that the district saw, along with other districts on Long Island, a drastic increase in state aid. Some of it was not usable for the budget, if I put it that way. So there was money for universal pre-K, there was money that's coming through federal grant. None of that could really be used to do anything for this year's budget. However, approximately $1 million of it could. So with that in mind, here's how the revenue, you're going to see that done, is you'll see the state aid going up from $11.8 million to $12.7 million. And then we'll look at the other points where that increase in revenue can create decreases, and one of them, I think, very important. So Dr. Burek talked about the summer playground decrease, so that is now estimated at $90,000. You'll see that interest, based on our lived experience, we see that interest is just, it was phenomenal. The last couple of years, the budget has been doing very well on interest. At one point, we were projecting 2 years ago $400,000 worth of interest. We're now not even comfortable with a $40,000 projection, so that's going to be lowered to $30,000. And then, as Dr. Burek said, we're going to decrease the use of reserves so that we keep some of that money in the bank, so for other times that when it can be needed in emergencies. So as you can see, there will be an increase in the revenue on this side. And then, Caleb, you could just go to the other side. This will have with the board's advice and permission, we are proposing to decrease the initially proposed levy. So back in February, we presented a levy of $72,566,899. That was a 1.88%. We are going to be able to use almost $650,000 of that savings to now present a new levy of $71,922,469, an increase of 0.98%, less than a 1% increase on the tax levy, and that's what we will be putting out to the voters this year. That will be our lowest levy in 5 years, and I think the first time we've ever gone under the cap since it has been initiated. So this is the first level of that. This is the public disclosure of this, and any questions from the board, this is kind of the time for that. Okay, thank you. Kaylee, you can bring down the slide. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Lynch. That's good news for the community. I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Belekas now for the curriculum update.
In all of our Regents classes in both the middle school and the high school, we will be administering departmentally developed final exams that will account for 10% of students' overall course averages. For the 4 courses in which the Regents exams must be offered, namely ELA, Algebra 1, Earth Science, and Living Environment, students can choose between taking the aforementioned final or the Regents to count as the 10% factored into their overall course averages. Students will not be permitted to sit for both exams, so they do need to make a choice. All students who do not take the Regents exam will receive an E for exemption on their official transcript, and those who do sit for the Regents exams can choose after their tests have been graded between having their scores appear or having the same E on their transcripts. Please note that regardless of their transcript decisions, anybody who sits for the Regents exams, their Regents scores will be factored into their course grades. So basically, the bottom line is children will have a choice for what that final 10% is in their grade. They can choose between our own developed final or the actual Regents exams. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Belekas. And capital projects update. Dr. Lynch?
As you can see, the high school is coming along nicely. However, it is going to impact real life very shortly. For those of you in the high school, you should have received last Friday an update from Mr. Reynes that on May 3rd, they'll be beginning sewer work outside the front here, and they're going to be ripping up the whole front. So therefore, the students will be unable to go into the traditional COVID entrance over by the library. The main entrance will now be moved around to Carpenter Avenue. Mr. Reynes will be giving more details as he gets closer to the date. We're hoping that that should be completed on or about May the 21st. In other, as you can see, the building is progressing very quickly now. It is watertight. The windows are in place. I took a walk through with Mr. Sater and the technology crew just the other day. It looks like a building. Actually, we saw tile work going up in the bathrooms today. So we're very hopeful that we'll be right on schedule. So that's the big capital project. And then as far as the little capital projects, we had a bid opening last week for the Atlantic Avenue boiler, and the board will be awarding that at the May 5th meeting.
Thank you, and that's my report.
So, Dr. Lynch, after the construction's done, that's when we'll be cleaning up the courtyard area and the field and the back corner, which used to be the old tennis court. Is that where the pickleball courts are going?
That is where the Project Owl adventure will be going, Mr. Belmont.
I tried, Mr. Yeager, but it's still an uphill battle. Anything else from the board? At this time, we will move to public comment. If anybody would like to address the board, please come to the microphone. Identify yourself as living in or out of district and present your comments or questions. It might still be on there.
The kids back. We've been waiting a long time for it, long overdue, but they're there. Our children, particularly mine, love science. Science is very important. He wants to be a doctor. He has not had a lab in over a year. It is unacceptable. The kid's taking chemistry. So much of chemistry you learn and what you know, how the chemicals interact together. They've not been able to do that all year. If you can have cooking after school as an after-school activity, the kids should be able to have labs. It's time.
Dr. Belekas?
I know that there's been a mix depending on the classrooms and what's been going on. I know that some of the labs, instead of the traditional way of delivering where you'd sit with a lab partner and work on things, that there have been a lot of demonstrations in those classes, which, you know, demonstrate the science being taught, but that is something that we are going to continue to monitor now, especially when the new CDC guidance is allowing for more sharing of materials. So, thank you.
There's 2 months left. If you don't do it now, and it's a bigger concern. A couple years ago, Dr. Burek, you might remember, my son didn't have a Spanish teacher for 67 days, and I reminded everyone over and over again. Now that we haven't done labs for a year, my concern is when he walks into AP Chem, teacher's going to teach the curriculum as if they did everything in regular chemistry, because that's the same thing that happened last year when he walked into Spanish and didn't have it for 67 days. How are you going to make up all the labs that they didn't learn? And how is that AP Chem teacher going to remember when my son may get her in 2 years, not next year, that he missed all of that? Because a lot of teachers tend to teach similar curriculum every year, and then that's not fair to the students.
Yeah, the labs aren't much different, though, when a demonstration occurs versus the child does it hands-on. You know, it's not like they're missing the content or the material. You know, instead of them necessarily mixing the things within the beaker, the teacher's doing that on the screen so everybody can see and witness it. So they're still learning the same science, they're still exposed to the same materials. So it's very different than not having a teacher in a classroom.
About science research. As of now, there's some materials they're still waiting for. The whole reason they take science research is to do the research, to learn about it, have their experiments. Here we are, my son still doesn't have all the materials. If he doesn't start his experiment, he's never going to finish it.
As far as the science research is concerned, I think those are best addressed by the classroom teacher.
Okay. My next concern is academically. What is the district doing to ensure equality between the kids that are in the classroom and the kids that are home? This year, it has not been done in the way, in my opinion, that it should have been. There are exams where kids at home, the only kids that are getting hundreds are the kids at home. And certain material that's on those tests was never covered in the classroom. Kids are finding it online. There needs to be a better way to ensure that the kids at home have the same standards. And I know it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy, but other districts are managing to do it, so there's greater equality.
I'm not sure exactly what you're alluding to, but I do think, again, those are questions that should be posed to individual teachers. As far as their assessments are concerned, those are controlled by the teachers in the courses. I do know that similar to other school districts, we have made adjustments in how we're assessing this year, and people are trying to do their best given the circumstances that, yes, you do have certain kids that are taking every exam at home. We did have, for a long time, half of the kids taking an exam at home and half in person. So there have been plenty of challenges with that. But I do think that, you know, each of the teachers and within the departments have tried to adjust their assessments according to what they perceive the needs to be.
I mean, I've had numerous conversations with teachers and with Mr. Reynes. It shouldn't be that there's an exam and only the kids at home get 100. That's a problem. There are smart kids. My son takes all honors. There are smart kids on both sides, whether you're in or out. There should be equality, and there should be a way, whether it's implementing better systems to stop the cheating, which, you know, I've had conversations with Mr. Reynes, Other districts are doing it. Other districts have a higher to return school number of students, and that's because the kids know that there's no advantage to being home. I implore you to do that. There's kids like mine that have high goals. They want to go Ivy League. There's plenty of kids like him. It's not fair, and it should be.
Yeah, I will say, though, there is a much more vast distribution of scores than I think most people are perceiving. And again, I think those are things that, need to be discussed by individuals with their teachers. Because I do hear a lot that there are significant advantages to being home and such, but the numbers don't necessarily tell the same story.
We could agree to disagree on that because the kids all talk about it. And I've had these conversations with Mr. Reynes. He was surprised when I told him there was cheating. So I think it really needs to be evaluated. My next question, unrelated, well, kind of related, but a little bit. Class rank. How come Lynbrook got rid of it? I'm asking because my son is starting recruiting, and many schools ask about class rank. And I was told, we don't have it anymore, we don't do it.
Yeah, that was done away with before I was superintendent.
Yeah, that
long
was
time
a
ago.
board decision years ago. Basically, the Board of Education decided that publishing that information was not in the best interest of students. It caused a lot of stress, and a lot of it was arguments over decimal places and such, and they did not see that as an educationally sound practice, and that was a board decision years ago.
If I remember correctly, it was that when there were rankings, some schools just cut off based on the ranking and didn't look any further at the students' grades or their activities or their other involvement that they had. So that was the reasoning behind it, was, still having valedictorian and salutatorian, but taking away the class ranking so that schools would then be forced to look at the whole student. And, I can't say for sure, but I know over the years, and this is going back 10, 12 years, we've had a lot of kids get into a lot of very, very competitive schools without the school ranking.
It's a question that's come up from a bunch of coaches. And at least, is there a way to find out, are you in the top 10, are you in the top 20, without knowing your particular number? I'm told that very few people can run that report, and I can't even get that information. And I think for certain kids, it matters based on where they want to go to school and future goals. And I don't think that a policy should hold that back.
I mean, that was something that was decided many years ago. There was research behind it, and as I said, over the years, I've been on the board for 13 years now. Kids have gotten into very competitive schools without having class ranking.
And there are some kids that may not have gotten in, or some kids that situationally there should be a modification if needed. I'm not saying exact number, but I doubt my son's the only one that, and maybe it's a combination of athletics and sports.
As far as the general information is concerned, what the school district tells the colleges that are looking for that ballpark type of information that you're describing, it's all included in the school profile. So the colleges do receive a profile of Lynbrook High School, which gives that type of information. So if you wanted to see what that looks like, I would give a call to the guidance department, and they can explain that to you.
Okay. And then for September, plans are to be fully back?
I would love everyone to be back.
Without the extended time period between classes?
I would love that, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Seeing nothing else from the community, we'll be moving on to donations. The Board of Education gratefully acknowledges and accepts the following donations. Fencing and paint valued at $500 from the Home Depot Corporation to be used to replace the existing fencing in the Waverly Park School's 9/11 garden. The Waverly Park School PTA donated a mural by local artist Ron Becker valued at approximately $3,800. Sadly, this evening, we also have 3 sympathy resolutions. Anastasios Garcias, whereas the members of the Board of Education of the Lynbrook Union Free School District have learned with sorrow of the recent passing of Anastasios, also known as Tommy Scarciaris, former custodian for the Lynbrook School District. And whereas Tommy Scarciaris served as a custodian for 12 years from 2007 through 2019 at West End Elementary School. And whereas the Board of Education is mindful of the contributions made to our district by him during his years of service to our community. Be it resolved that the Board of Education records its sorrow, its sympathy, and the esteem in which Tommy Scarciaris was held. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to the family of Tommy Scarciaris with the hope that they will find solace and comfort in the rich heritage of good works for which he's remembered and revered. Mr. Michael Kozloff, whereas the members of the Board of Education of the Lynbrook Union Free School District have learned with sorrow of the recent passing of Michael Kozloff, former art teacher for the Lynbrook School District, and whereas Michael Kozloff served as an art teacher for 37 years, from 1964 through 2001, at Lynbrook High School, and whereas the Board of Education is mindful of the contributions made to our district by Michael Kozloff during his years of service to our community. Be it resolved that the Board of Education records its sorrow, its sympathy, and the esteem in which Michael Kozloff was held, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to the family of Michael Kozloff with the hope that they will find solace and comfort in the rich heritage of good works for which he is remembered and revered. Eleanor Martorella, whereas the members of the Board of Education of the Lynbrook Union Free School District have learned with sorrow of the recent passing of Eleanor Martorella, former stenographer for the Lynbrook School District, and whereas Eleanor Martorella served as a stenographer for 24 years, from 1970 through 1994 at Lynbrook South Middle School, and whereas the Board of Education is mindful of the contributions made to our district by Eleanor Martorella during the years of service to our community. Be it resolved that the Board of Education records its sorrow, its sympathy, and the esteem in which she was held, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to the family of Eleanor Martorella with the hope they will find solace and comfort in the rich heritage of good works for which she is remembered and revered. I'd like to ask for a consent agenda on resolutions 2104C1 through 2104C11, 2104NC2 through 2104NC15, and 2104G1 through 2104G51. Mrs. Dinino, second. Mr. Paskoff. All in favor? May I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Mr. Yaker, second. Mr. Pileski. All in favor? Thank you. That concludes our meeting. Everyone get home safe, stay safe, and stay happy.